will go ahead and start if y'all are ready.
And we didn't cover this, but do we want to go around and
Yeah.
talk about, introductions?
Yeah, we've got a lot of new people here.
Should we do that before the call to order, or should we do that? Call to order first. Awesome. All right, then, we're here at the City of Hendersonville Downtown Advisory Board. This is the call to order on July 14th, 2026. My name is Joe, and I'll start it off because we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Just a quick introduction. My name is Joe Dinan. I own Aquaha Brewing Company and also Blue Ridge Beer Garden, both in Main Street. I was just re-elected. I think this is my second.
Be able to print, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh.
There you go. Hey, love you.
Told you mine.
I don't know, maybe we start over here with Oliver and we go clockwise.
Oliver Wall. I'm the general manager of Mast General Store, 7 Generals. But I have been here, I think 2 years now, 1 term. And yeah, I've really enjoyed kind of opening my horizons and figuring out a little bit more what's going on and getting involved, and love the existing group, the exiting group, and I'm sure I love y'all as well. I'm meeting all y'all, and yeah, we've got some cool stuff going on in our town. I've been here at this Mast location about 5 years. I lived right on Main Street for the first 3 years, and have since moved, but I've been with Mast 11 years now, and I've seen Mast come into different cities and in the Southeast, and there's similarities in all of our communities, and seeing Hendersonville's unique kind of charm and how Mast fits in here and has fit in for a long time has been really cool.
I'm Jenny Breedlove, and I own the Emporium on Main and the Emporium Market. You got it. And I guess this is still my first term. And prior to owning these 2 on Main Street, we used to own a restaurant, which we no longer do. But so I love Hendersonville. Been here since 2014.
My name is Terry Young. I am a property owner of Center Avenue. This is first meeting.
Welcome.
Welcome.
My name is Aaron Adams. I'm the owner of White Duck Taco Shop on 7th Avenue. This is my first term, but I think I'm coming up on 3 years soon. I came in the start of the Streetscape on 7th and just been coming to the meetings and volunteering since then. And been in Hendersonville for about 12 years, I think, and love it here. Great.
So I'm one of the newbies, Gary Heisey, Blue Ridge Community College. I facilitate the Henderson County Digital Leadership Program, and I do adjunct faculty work for the Small Business Center and some of the business functions of the college.
My name is Erica Hodges. This is my first meeting as well. Also sit on the Economic Vitality Committee. But I sell residential real estate for Howard Hanna Beverly Hanks, and I own several buildings in Hendersonville. I live in Hendersonville, but own one on Main, one on 3rd, 7th, and Asheville Highway.
And I'm Yvonne Hill. I'm at the Goldsmith by Rudy. My dad's had the business since 1975. We're in our 51st year. Also a newbie here. I've worked with him. I've worked with him for 38 years, and love Main Street, love Hendersonville, and just want to be more involved after all this time.
Awesome. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Pava. I am the current key holder of Black Bear Coffee Company on Main Street. Been on the board since 2000. We've covered a lot of stuff.
2020.
2020, I'm sorry. That wouldn't be allowed. 2020.
Things.
We've covered a lot of stuff from parking and garages and meters and future projects in the city. I think, I think I'm on the last one, right? Starting the last term here? Somewhere around, you know. All I would suggest to everyone who is new here is, I strongly encourage you to speak to people, and on your block or in your area. Get feedback from them, let them know what we do here, invite them to come and listen. I'm a strong believer that we represent the people on Main Street and Seventh Ave, and we should represent their voice. I also am a strong believer that if we have votes, vote the way you feel, vote the way the people you talk to feel. It's okay if you vote no and everyone votes yes, and it's okay if you vote yes and everyone else votes no. Our job here is to try and give city council an idea of how the community on Main Street and Seventh Ave feel about the topics being brought up. Get involved, stay involved, voice your opinions. And this is a great place for really good conversation. So let's be open-minded to everyone's views. It keeps it all rolling.
And I'm Nancy Nykerk. This is the first year of my second term, but my 5th year. So.
We did some finagling.
Very nice.
I moved here in 22 and did it all on my own after losing my husband. I worked many years, many hours, and always wanted to be involved in my community. But when you get up at 4:30 and you work 12, 14-hour days, you don't have the opportunity for that. So I came here and got to know the people here. So impressed by our leadership, Jamie and Dakota and Terry. They are amazing. And you'll learn a lot from them. So the listening is good, but it's also, you know, getting involved in doing things and going to the different businesses. I mean, most of these business owners could say, yeah, we see Nancy all the time. So that's what it's all about, is getting out there and being involved. And I don't think there's anything else I should say.
And then I think everybody, or as far as staff goes, everybody knows me, I'm Jamie, I'm here.
I'll introduce myself shortly.
Yeah, you'll hear plenty from Matt here in a bit. Maybe even at some point you'll feel like it might be too much, but you'll get a lot of good stuff. I'm just kidding. And then, Ivan, you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ivan Acosta, and I'm an intern for the Hendersonville downtown. I'm in college currently. So, yeah.
I'm Dakota Parker, downtown Vegas coordinator. Y'all, I know Mr. Y'all.
Hi, Dakota.
Great, thank you. And so that takes us into those call to order organizational meeting. We've got some big stuff. You can tell by the size of this packet. There's a lot going on today. I'm gonna need a little bit of help with this because this is not super normal.
Yes.
We've got to do a selection of a chair and a vice chair. I think it was supposed to take place last meeting, but
No, it's always.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so for today, we'll like chair and vice chair. It's a little difficult now because we had Matthew had been on for so long as the vice chair, and then Caroline, who had not been on for so long as chair. So it's a new thing for everybody. And then after that, we'll vote for our committee members, which is in the agenda packet, and schedule.
Great.
Yeah, start with chair and vice chair.
So at this point, do we just make nominations? Is it open? The floor is open to make nominations.
Yeah, I'd say you probably just want to start with the chair and then do the vice chair
Okay,
after.
over the chair.
Is it common to ask if anyone's interested in not being nominated, or?
Is anybody interested in not being nominated?
Interested in not being
Is that what
nominated?
you said?
In being nominated.
Nominate yourself, putting yourself up for nomination.
When you're sitting.
For those who are new here and may not know everybody here.
Totally. Yes. All right, is there anybody who would like to propose themselves?
I would like to propose myself.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Joe,
I would like to propose Nancy.
very good.
And figure out how to vote for that.
Yeah, right.
I
I'm afraid you can. I don't mean to be embarrassed. I know.
It'd be great. I think it'd both be great.
No offense taken, absolutely.
Okay, so has the chair shall be selected by majority vote of the board unless city council indicates to the board that the city council will appoint said chair, which does not happen. And so the chair and the vice chair shall be elected by a majority vote of the board. Yes. So we would do I guess we would do a vote for Mark and then a vote for Nancy. In that process, and then who has the majority would be the chair. And if everyone is agreeable, I would say, if there's somebody who wants to be vice chair, that's not the two of them, we would have the second person be the vice chair. But we can have that as a vote. Okay.
Since I don't know neither one, I mean, if I got a coin.
Yeah.
Vice chair running. So I would say since Mark was the first to say something, I guess you could ask.
Does anybody have any questions
Yeah, or yeah.
for either one of us?
Maybe if you could take 1 minute and just give us a little bit of your background again that you already shared for us.
In Michigan, I worked for Jim and Chrysler. Education and training is my background. I was a program manager. So I would lead a team of 30 to 40 people developing instruction based on their current, work being done. And that's what I did in Michigan. And my son and his family lived in Raleigh. We'd come down and visit him and then stop in Hendersonville on the way back home, my husband and I, and visit his secretary that retired here. We fell in love with Hendersonville. And so even though I lost year, people called me gutsy, packed up the house and moved down here. And in a nutshell, I have 2 kids, 6 grandkids, and I love Hendersonville.
Good.
Try and beat that.
You can see, we're not enemies.
You can always mention babies and children.
So we came down in 2009, bought a business on Main Street in 2019. Have just tried to be involved. My kids all go to school here. They went to the high school. My wife works at the high school. So we're very involved with downtown and Main Street. I've been through a lot of different years on this committee, making a lot of decisions that were definitely a group, but a lot of time, a lot of effort that we have all put in. Not to say that any prior years were any more important than others, but we both put in a lot of time. This is my last term on. So, I feel that it would be a good exiting move for me to have that sort of experience. So that
Yours ends 2028.
2020.
Yeah, so you actually have
One more term after this.
a year. So you have 2 years left. Yeah.
But in the last term.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that when I do move on to help other boards in town or sit on committees, that I will have that sort of experience to be able to take on more. I do have 2 kids left in high school, 2 kids in college. So, by the time they're out, I'll be all in 100%. And not that I'm not now, but at times, there is some gains and other commitments, just to be completely transparent, but it doesn't, I always watch the videos online and we always try and be as involved as we possibly can on our end. But I will assure you that, for those of you who don't know either one of us, either decision that you make will not be a wrong decision.
Great. And so, sorry, are we voting for one person at a time? And is it gonna be like just a show of hands?
If that's what's agreeable for everyone, if y'all are okay with that, I'd say that's.
Secret ballot, what is it?
Unless everyone feels more comfortable doing it in a different way, I'd be okay. I mean, if y'all are all okay with just raising your hand for one or the other.
Sound good?
do That.
Okay, Mark proposed himself first. How about we throw him up there first? Who would vote for Mark? Okay, we've got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 1, 2, 6. Right,
Don't we have a person online?
They cannot vote.
Okay.
They can only participate by calling in. We do have a couple people who will be coming in late, but they weren't here for the votes they can. Okay. So that was 6.
and then
It would be,
a vote for Nancy. Be 3.
all right. Never chair and vice chair for all minutes.
Congrats, guys.
Good job on coming up with a vote, that's been kind of the first that we've really had since I've been here, so congratulations, everybody.
Awesome.
So then now, Mark,
So they start right now?
Yeah.
Like the handoff?
Get out of here.
All right.
you're off the hook now, too.
All right.
Do we get to pick our seats or do we have to?
You have to go sit over there.
Come on, you want the hot seat? Come on over.
Coming too, right?
You're vice chair, y'all go here. Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Do that in an official vote as vice chair, so that way I've got it in the record.
I can sit here as vice chair.
I have to
No,
say,
it's more, so we need to vote for vice chair, because that was a vote for,
your nomination.
does anybody want to be nominated for, oh, good point. I nominate Nancy as the vice chair.
A seconding.
Is there anybody, should we ask if anybody?
Does anybody else want to be nominated as vice chair? All right, so let's vote for Nancy as vice chair.
All right,
Unanimous. Great.
okay, yep, now you have chair, vice chair.
It's official.
Do we really have to move? Let's go.
You better read. Really gotta move.
I know.
Aaron, I'm gonna sit next to you. Oh, my bad.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. We're having a baby at the end of the year, so I'm here, it's not.
Thank you. We have the official announcement?
Sure. It's been announced amongst our group, so yes, it was. My time in the new year is probably not gonna be, not here.
Open.
Yeah. All right.
So first thing that we need to do is our committee members, which that's in the agenda packet. Those are always people we can add throughout the year, but we do want to just approve the slate of subcommittee members. If there is any others, if you really new people who want to join a committee, you can also just come to them and decide if you want to join it at a later time.
So we're looking at page 4 right now, correct?
Yes, correct. We could, if there are any changes, we could go ahead and make those now and then approve as.
I'm not on the,
You know what? I bet you weren't on there last year.
I wasn't.
You know?
I'm also open to, I mean, I see one has less, if I need to move, that's also okay.
Good at all.
Yeah.
That would be. I think my suggestion would be to stay on economic vitality for you with your role. And I remember this happening last year too, I'm sorry.
No,
And my name on that is misspelled.
It's because I copied over from last year, I thought that's how your name was spelled.
Yeah, had to see it, so okay.
So if there's any changes other than adding Oliver to economic vitality, we can either approve or add anyone in the vote.
Is there any of our new members that want to join them?
They haven't said specifically yet, so they might want to, unless if there are any particulars that felt of interest to you guys.
Are the new members familiar with the two
We had.
over that in the orientation?
My initial thought would be Gary and Terry would be on economic vitality. And would be my suggestion. And Yvonne, I'm not sure what you might be interested in, but I will say that our events committee is looking to we're looking to switch that over to be more about like promotions, like the window decorations and like merchant events and stuff like that. So that you kind of know what you're doing and might have some good advice on that. That would be my suggestion. We are looking to kind of spruce that up.
So I read each of those, but could you in one sentence share the difference between community character and economic vitality?
Yes, so community character focuses on public space. So right now, the main focus is public art, and that'll probably continue to be the focus for a while now. But then also things like streetscapes, any public investment on basically the outside public sphere. And then economic vitality focuses on buildings and businesses, so things that impact businesses and their properties. So the economic vitality committee will review our facade grants and anything related to that. The community character committee has been working on a mural grant program, so that is a grant they would be reviewing.
So I'll be happy to start with economic vitality, and then I'll attend the other ones.
Sure.
Gary. Steve. Gotcha.
Okay.
So we go with the economic vitality.
Terry. And Ivana, would you want to do events?
Yeah, I'll do that. That sounds good.
And everyone can always attend all of them if you can. Be like Nancy and join in everywhere.
Well, it's the only way you really get to know everything that's going on.
Yeah. We get a lot more into the weeds in those. So do we want to go ahead and vote with Terry Oliver, Terry added on this list for economic vitality, and Yvonne added for events?
Can't we just make a proposal to
Yeah, do we-
accept those with the additions?
Mm-hmm.
I make that proposal.
Okay, 1 second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then the next thing we have is our event schedule.
One thing on that, I'd like to request, if anyone is not opposed, but to change the September 8th to possibly the following week. I just know the Tuesday after Apple Festival, we shut down. We're just wiped. So I don't know if anybody else
agreed.
is opposed to that. If not, that's fine too.
I agree.
We need to take a vote on that, or is that just kind of?
Yeah, either we vote on it, or we could also decide in the August meeting if we just want to cancel for September. So if we want to have it on the calendar to have a meeting in September, we can do that, or we can vote to cancel it. Actually, either way, we'll have to do it as a special. That we won't.
That will, yeah.
So yeah, we could either vote to change it or vote to cancel it.
And are there any other dates on here that anybody, has everyone reviewed the dates? Is everyone good with those dates?
And I would point out that the subcommittees will not meet on November 3rd because that's election day. And we will not have subcommittee meetings in August because that's when we're at the Main Street Managers meeting. And into 2027, we won't have a meeting in March because that's when we're at the Main Street Conference. For September, do you want to push it back a week or do you want to cancel it?
I personally prefer if we pushed it back a week, but
That's good. That would be September 15th.
or no vote.
That'll get updated in the
Calendar.
calendar. Everything will get updated,
Yeah, I'll send a whole updated, just like do a whole fresh new calendar.
assuming it gets accepted.
Yeah.
We can just do a motion to approve as amended if you want to do that.
Does anyone want to?
Motion to move the September 8th meeting to September 15th.
That's Joe on the motion. Anyone second? Second, please, for Erica. We get a vote. All in favor, aye? Aye. Sounds like the ayes have got it. Anyone for nay? Great.
As our organization. And then we have, minutes from last month.
I have one question, under approval of minutes, February 26th Downtown Advisory Board minutes, John Ray made a motion to approve. Wouldn't that be the word moves?
Oh, yeah. So just remove moves.
Yeah. Didn't have any other issues. I read through it all. I think the motion with the correction is accepted.
Minutes are approved. We take a motion on that?
You can make that.
Motion second? Second was Aaron?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Guys have got it, and the minutes have been approved.
As far as state dial, I think the fountain looks good.
Agreed. Second.
And the flowers look great this year. I think that's-
Sounds good. Like you walk out our front door and you just like hear running water. It's so nice. Yeah.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the planning division.
Public comment.
I'm sorry, public comment. Is there anyone online?
Hopefully. Yeah. We do have a, Herman is on the meeting, he's on the board, so he must be calling in, but when you call in for the downtown board, you cannot vote. I'm not sure who the iPhone is. Oh, me, I'm not listening. It's your also. Get over there, I'm gonna leave.
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Sorry, Herman, I was just noting that you were here calling in, you just couldn't vote.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And no public comments. So then we've got approval of the agenda.
Motion.
It's a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
So moved.
Joe moves second.
Second.
Oliver second. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Oh. It is. Oh, sorry, yeah, it's what everyone else has the okay ones, these are some shit strips.
Okay.
Matt, would you be so kind as just to introduce yourself so everybody knows how important you are?
I don't know about that. Matthew Manley, I'm the long range planning manager with the city of Hendersonville and with the city for 5.5 years. One of the things I do is or have done and doing in this case is processing amendments to our zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. These are ordinances that guide the outcomes when it comes to new development, redevelopment, things that are built in the city. And so sometimes there are, emerging trends, changes in public opinion, changes in political winds, whatever it may be, that causes us to look at what we have on the books with our ordinances and to revisit that, whether it be, adding some additional standards and language or adjusting some existing language. And so in this case, what we are bringing forth is the implementation of the design guidelines that were outlined in the city's downtown master plan, which was adopted in August of 2004. It's chapter 5 of the comprehensive plan, the Gen H comprehensive plan. It is also a standalone document. The downtown master plan happened to be adopted with our comprehensive plan, but it didn't necessarily have to be. It can stand on its own, and it is informative and guiding for the vision for downtown specifically. And as a component of that downtown master plan, the consultants included these design guidelines for both public investments that the city could make, but also for private development. And so in order to formalize those, right, they're in the downtown master plan, they're just a guide at that point. By adopting them into our ordinance, they become a standard, they become law. And so new development would have to comply with it. And so that's the big difference. So we are codifying, proposing to codify the design guidelines and make them design standards in our ordinance. The way that we're proposing to do that is in what's called an overlay district, which I'll touch on a little bit more. And you all have your maps in front of you, and I'll talk about that, how overlays work. But in that overlay, the standards would be broken down into 3 different areas. The public realm, which is everything kind of between the buildings, within the public right of way. The site design, which is how buildings, parking, and other elements are laid out on a site. And then building design, which is the architecture of the building. I mentioned, this being part of the comprehensive plan. There are 5, this relates to either directly or indirectly 5 different projects that were outlined in our implementation chapter of the comprehensive plan. How do we go from vision to implementation? But you accomplish these projects. So this relates to a number of those, and the reason that it is doing that is because it touches on a number of goals that are outlined specifically in the comprehensive plan, and obviously objectives that are within those goals. It is also tied in with the city council's new strategic plan. It's explicitly a project that is to be achieved. And then once it is, it actually serves as a domino for some other projects that the city would like to achieve, primarily looking at doing something similar along our corridors that are gateways into the city. And tied to this is this opportunity to, if you strengthen your standards and you ensure certain development outcomes are going to be achieved, then you can raise the trigger point for requiring really involved levels of review, like certain projects based on their size have to go to city council, planning board and city council. That's a long and rigorous process for development approval. So if we have these standards in place, we can then consider raising those caps so that we streamline development approvals while also making it, making sure the outcomes are more in line with the city's vision, which is a bit of a trade-off for private development. One of the things I'll say that, in these conversations to date, which have been plentiful, I'll go over this first. The staff planning in downtown worked together on this collaboratively at numerous times over the last several months. We had a specific committee of planning board members that met at least 5 times. They met 5 consecutive weeks in a row as we actually went line by line and exhaustively went through and drafted the ordinance or critiqued an initial draft. We brought to the Downtown Advisory Board as an information item. We went line by line with the Economic Vitality Committee and made changes based on that feedback. We've gone through some legal review. There's a couple of items that still need some specific direction from legal. We took it to City Council for a workshop at the end of June, took it to Planning Board last Thursday, and took it to the Business Advisory Council yesterday. And so today we'd be looking for a formal recommendation from the Downtown Advisory Board. There are components of it, details that are, subject to change. And if you would prefer to defer and, wait for a more finalized version, we're happy to bring it back at another month. There are some additional elements of the exhibits for the adoption process that we're looking to put together to provide assurances to City Council and understand, answer their questions and understand the impacts of what's being proposed. So we may have, some additional visuals that we could, for instance, or data that we could present to you. Such as, one thing I don't have right now is like, we did an analysis of vacant and underutilized property within the entire city as part of the comprehensive plan. I'd like to clip that data to the boundaries of the downtown district and look at, how many vacant parcels are there, how many underutilized parcels are there that are prime for redevelopment. So those are going to be the parcels that are the lowest hanging fruit, most likely to be impacted by these. And so that's just an example.
So if you wouldn't mind for me, with the standards, what's the big thing we're trying to gain?
Yeah,
What's the big thing we're trying to avoid? Just big picture.
Yeah, big picture, that's exactly where I was headed next. And I haven't necessarily leaned into this too much in some of these previous presentations, but I want to today is, the impetus for this is really about community character, about preserving and expanding downtown. There is a purpose and intent. The opening portion of the language in the ordinance talks about the purpose and the intent. And it's essentially to ensure compatibility for new construction to be developed in a way that's compatible with our traditional urban downtown. To take that form that we all know and love and cherish and ensure that new development fits in with it in a way that's compatible, and then also in a way that helps us expand that footprint so that we're taking that walkable environment and the economic vibrancy that comes with it, and we're expanding it to the edges of downtown. So it's a wider footprint outlined in the black there. And so that's that. Now, with that, that all sounds great. With that, there are, realities in terms of impacts to private property rights and development cost and things of that nature. So there's this idea, I think in my mind, I would say this is a very valued part of our town. It's the core of the city. It's the heartbeat of Hendersonville. It's elevated in that sense. And so if you're going to build in that area, there's going to be an elevated set of standards for that development.
Can I ask a question?
That's reflective of the character and the value that the community has. Yeah.
Does the majority of this boundary already have like sewer and water?
Oh, yeah.
Or will this help expand that out?
No, this is all,
Already covered.
this is all like old parts of town. Yeah. It may have outdated water and sewer.
That's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd add just context, especially for some of the newer.
I'll accept that.
For the newer folks on the board, we spent a lot of time with the downtown master plan as part of the comprehensive plan a couple of years ago. And one of the big concerns, especially with 7th, was where, in South Main, is where there's empty parcels that are built more vehicle oriented rather than building it up to the sidewalks. Like if the new infill development on 7th Avenue didn't have a developer who was already kind of bought into this that we have before we've even adopted it, that could have very well been something that did not get utilized in that space. That's just one example, and that's what particularly the downtown board in the past has been worried about, buildings that could be demolished and what goes in after that, and then some of our empty parcels and making it be built to where it's that pedestrian oriented. Still has space for cars, but built more with the form that we've got, if that makes sense.
So is this just for current buildings or?
It's for new buildings.
New buildings.
Yes.
So
good
there's
question.
no master plan of like empty buildings that are currently on Main Street?
Yeah, because the ones on Main Street are already fit within that. If something were to get torn down and become an empty lot,
Right.
Or I guess Main Street already has the historic district, but on 7th, if something got torn down in an already existing lot, like Kilpatrick's, for example, or some further east on the street, if they got torn down, currently they wouldn't be able to be rebuilt up to the sidewalk, or they could, but they wouldn't have to, right?
Where?
Like further east on 7th where
You can.
you can't.
It's C2. I was just gonna say, the one that you were referring to on 7th, was it last December or 2 Decembers ago? That property owner engaged the city in rezoning the property. We rezoned that entire block from C2 secondary business to CMU, which allowed and I'll talk about this more with the setbacks section, allowed the buildings to be built up close to the sidewalk. If it had not been rezoned, they would have had to have set back, I think 20 feet, 15 or 20 feet from the front. So, and that zoning that requires that is what continues on 7th the rest of the way. So you can see this area in yellow would be the C2 zoning. So this would go on top of that underlying zoning, and where it conflicted, the downtown design overlay would supersede. So part Part of this is also a strategy that I won't go into too detail on, but the state adopted a down zoning law that greatly restricted cities' authorities when it comes to rezoning, compared to the way it had been for decades and decades. And so it's made it trickier for us. And so we're not messing with the underlying zoning. We're adding design standards for new construction on top of the underlying zoning. So the uses and what's permitted per zoning is going to stay the same. But if you build, you'll have to build according to these new standards. So new construction, additions, and then exterior renovations is one of the question marks for legal, like in a outside of our current non-conforming requirements would say that if you renovate to a certain amount, then you would trigger having to come into compliance with our ordinance. So just even doing an interior renovation would trigger. We cannot do that, and we are not doing that with this. So interior renovations are not triggering, oh, now I've got to move my building or something, add on to my building and make it compliant. That is not the case here. But if you're doing a redevelopment or an addition, it needs to be compliant. So that's how it's applied, and that's some of the background and intent. The way that you figure out what standards are apply to your properties, all based on the property where you were located and that you're trying to develop, and where that property sits in relationship. Is this being shared as well?
I have an example that like helped me with thinking about this and understanding it, because I don't know anything about government or anything, but like say you wanted to own a piece of property near the Spartanburg Highway near the Sphinx, and I wanted to sell it and make another Dunkin' Donuts. It's private property, I can do whatever I want. But in this little district, I couldn't change the facade of my building and say this is going to be Dunkin' Donuts now. It's going to look like this kind of gray, we wanted. What I hear from citizens is as Hendersonville's growing, we want some kind of influence over at least this space, this district. And so this is a district where the government has a different tax rate and has a little more influence over and can kind of control the new growth that's going to be coming to Hendersonville. It's already on the way. Give us influence over what we want that to look like and what you can and can't do in this space, or if you want to do something else.
Like we can't necessarily prevent like a Dunkin' Donuts from coming in, but we can regulate with this, the type of form, like.
You can't have it dragged.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden Dunkin' Donuts isn't interested in moving downtown. Maybe they want to go to Spartanburg Highway. Maybe that's a better spot for them. So you kind of control the growth of Hendersonville over the next 20+ years. Think of it.
In appearance.
Yeah.
In appearance.
Because a lot of, in North Carolina, I hear a lot of people, they just want to like it the way it is, and it's got something good here. We don't like the big changes. And so, okay, if you want to be active about that kind of attitude, how do you control that? What do you want to have, the government should have some voice in the conversation.
And again, this is only in the district that's marked. And those of you who are building owners and have dealt with the historical district, it kind of ties into some of those things where we're not having, or we are allowed to have certain perimeters. Like one of them is, if I'm not mistaken, is being able to build up to the sidewalk, where some of that region in the C2 does not allow that, correct?
Correct.
So if that Kava building that just went empty wanted to be rebuilt, they could go up to the sidewalk if they wanted, correct? But currently they cannot.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't prevent a certain type of business.
No, that's not going to change. That's what's in the underlying zoning. And then this is going on top of that. But the businesses that you are or are not allowed is essentially staying the same. And we'll talk about a little bit of nuance with that. So it's governed in kind of three ways. One, are you in the boundary, larger boundary? Okay. If yes, is the property in which one of these four character districts, kind of sub-districts, different, there's a little different character amongst these four different areas, and they each have slightly different standards that would apply. So you find where you are within that district. Once you know that, then you're gonna look for
You can scoot over.
which street you're fronting on and what streetscape character that street is designated. And so there's these, I don't know, 10 or so designations. Each of them have different standards and different characteristics. And I'll go into more detail on that. And so once you know that, those two things, kind of the last thing you'll need to know is your height district. And so you would be in one of these three height districts. And so this is going to dictate how the maximum height of any building in that area. And so I'll go into more detail on each of those things, but wanted to make sure that everyone understood we have this map, it's interactive, you can put your address in, it'll drop you in. You can, let's see, we'll attempt to choose let's see if parcel's turned on here. Yeah, select a parcel. This is all parcel data. This tells us that we're in the larger boundary. This tells us that we're in the Main Street character district. And then you would see which street frontage you're on. Now that's turned on. Without that here, let's see.
I don't know that we'll have very many people who will be, who are on this board who will be particularly impacted on that.
Yeah, well, all the information is in here, whether you can click on it. Well, it says we got 5. It's here. It's one of these.
So if I own some property within the boundary, it gives me guidelines of what I can do in the future. If I have a lot, I'm tearing the building down or whatever.
Correct.
But it also protects my property. So something doesn't go next to me that would drag my property down
Yes.
because of how it looks or how it's built and things like that.
Yes.
Correct. So the first thing you got to figure out is how, which area are we in? What street am I fronting on? Then as you go through the rest of the standards, you'll know, okay, well, then I'm in the lower trailhead area. So I know that when it talks about lower trailhead, it's talking about, it's relevant to me. If it's, if I'm on Main Street, then I know that that streetscape character type is relevant to me. So again, 3 buckets: public realm, everything outside of in the public right of way, site design, how things are laid out on the site, and then the architecture of the building. So first bucket, public realm. The standards are, basically the headings of each section of standards is the items that are, letters A through G here. And then there's a little short summary of what that does. And without going into line by line, I'm going to try and go over it with you. So the first one is the block layout. So if a redevelopment or a development's occurring and there's an opportunity to continue the city's historic traditional interconnected street grid, then we would look for the site to be developed in a way that allowed that connectivity to continue. The second thing would be the utilization of alleys. So if there's a existing alley or a paper alley, one that's been platted but was never constructed, or an opportunity to create a new alley, the utilization of alleys is required and or encouraged for new development. The sidewalks are on all of these streetscape types. There are sidewalks on both sides of the street. The widths of the sidewalk are based on that streetscape character type. And so we'll refer to that in just a second. There are some bicycle facilities, mainly greenway opportunities that cut through you have the Coosa Trail and the Oklawaha Greenway. There's a portion of which of both of those in this area, but then also future trail connections for Above the Mud, which is the connection between those two trails, and the Saluda Grade Trail that would come up from the south. And so opportunities for new development orienting along those trails, and there's a certain responsibility for properties that abut those trails, potential trails. We have some other items in here about providing bike facilities, if we had plans for a bike lane or sharrows along street frontage, but then you would have kind of an incomplete facility if you just did it right in front of one property. And so, well, maybe they would pay in to help fund a future full-length project, but those are pretty low-cost projects, and they can be complicated if there's a jockeying of right-of-way use and how things are allocated. So it just got a little more complicated than it was worth. So we just took it out. So there's really just info in here about greenways, streetscape elements. So if you, based on your streetscape character type, there may be requirements for providing or choosing between a number of elements that you could choose to provide, such as lighting, benches, planters, bike racks, things like that, that would be in the amenity zone out in front of, within the sidewalk in the public realm. And then street trees would be required to be planted. The number is going to depend on your streetscape character, and outdoor gathering spaces also by a certain percentage of your site would be required. So I talked about the streetscape character types. In the downtown master plan, it has these cross sections for all the different character types. And in that you have, these examples, in these examples, there's like 10 of them. This one is the downtown streets, and you can see how they're mapped. It's on all the avenues are designated as downtown streets. So what's a downtown street? Well, it tells us the width of the sidewalk plus this amenity zone is going to be what it is. It tells us the on-street parking is going to be delineated and be parallel, as opposed to, say, angled or not delineated, not marked. It's going to tell us the width of the travel lane, that there are shared lane markings, and those travel lane widths will change. So all of that is outlined in this cross section, is outlined in this table, and it varies between the different street types. And there's various street types throughout the district.
We not gone over all of this stuff like many times. I'm sorry.
Have we?
I feel like in these meetings, we've covered a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So what is, I don't want to sound like a jerk here.
No,
What's the ultimate goal? What are we?
To interrupt you, first of all, I'd like to say it's 5 o'clock. Normally we end at 5. Jamie was very kind to let us know to allow more time. We'll make sure we try and get out at 6 today. That's kind of going, I think, to your point. A lot of this has been kind of reviewed, but I think it may be important if we still cover.
For the newer folks?
For the newer folks.
Yeah, sure.
Because, and I suggest that a lot of the people that are new here, and I'm sure a lot of people that have been here would agree. Normally our packets are like 5 pages, 10 pages long. This is a meeting. This is like you guys came in on a good one. When
I prepped them a little bit on it.
make sure you go through these, because there's a lot of history that goes on to what Matt's talking about and what Joe's bringing up. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about with like sidewalk space and buildings up to curbs, like that was part of the master plan that we went through in 24, correct? Which really put city of Hendersonville on path for about the next 10 years. So what we're trying to accomplish now is getting some sort of information of this new overlay that is being introduced after the master plan and what that
I
looks
feel like
like.
we had this meeting though, only like 3 or 4, like in the springtime.
Very similar overview. And now what the ask from staff is for a formal recommendation. Before it was like information. Do you have any feedback? things you like, do you not like?
Together in session.
Yeah, like that was a time to like, and it still is, to suggest changes. And things that you're like, oh, this thing stinks, you need to throw this part out or whatever. And now we're like, hey, we've been workshopping all this and now this is what we got. So parts of this have changed and modified and cleaned up, other parts have not. So they're gonna sound familiar.
Is there anything that's specifically different?
So I can try to focus on that and focus on how the proposed changes would be different than what the way it is today, like with our current zoning. I can highlight those kind of things if I think.
I think that's a great point, yeah.
And I just to kind of give a little bit more kind of where we are for today. This got presented to city council that was in June, right, at their workshop. And they did have, I think there's some concern from the business, not necessarily the downtown business side, because y'all are already in it, but for those outskirt areas where this will be impacted because of the potential costs. And Chris Cormier, who's no longer on the board, had brought up some of that feedback before, and he's on another committee that's heard it as well. So it's if the board is supportive of these things, then that will give them varying perspectives from what the downtown board feels is important and where some other boards may or may not, if that's what would want to go with, if that makes sense. And then this also, some people have heard this many times, myself included, because we also went through this with the Economic Vitality Committee, pretty in-depth and got some good feedback from that and from city council. And so that's what Matt wants to make sure if it's an informed decision, the board for a formal recommendation.
I think what Joe's trying to say is he's trying to catch the second half of the soccer game.
Should be over by now. I see Oliver checking his phone over there. No, it's.
I'll go quicker. So all the streetscape stuff is outlined in this table. And so another easy way to find what it is. Now, you guys talked about the setbacks a lot. The big difference here is that today, we talked about how, property was rezoned from C2 that says the minimum, you have to set back at least 15, 20 feet from your property line. The new zoning, CMU, allows you to come up to the front, but it doesn't require that you do it. This takes that next step. And it says, not only do you, have a minimum setback, you have a maximum setback. You cannot set back deeper into your lot. It brings those buildings up to the street. It's a maximum setback of 0 so primary, secondary, and tertiary streets are those 10 streetscape character types are then further categorized. So the more primary main roads, busier roads are primary, and then secondary are the medium traveled roads, and then tertiary are more residential, slower roads. And so that corresponds to how development is going to occur along those corridors. And so the maximum setback for primary, like Main Street, 0, you can set back 10 feet if you provide outdoor seating area that is reviewed and approved by the community development director. Otherwise, you're going to have your building at the sidewalk edge. The secondary, you set back maximum of 10 feet. The minimum is 0 if you go up from B to A. You see, the minimum setback is 0. The maximum setback is 10. The other big thing to see here, and you can read the rest of the table, I won't go through it, is the build to percentage, which is the amount of the building that has to cover the frontage of the lot. So if you have a build to percentage of 80%, that means the building edge or plaza, outdoor seating area, so it doesn't have to be just building, but something that's either publicly accessible or the actual built form will cover that frontage. So you don't get vacant portions of a parcel that said, oh, I met I met the maximum setback requirement with this 10 foot of building, but the other 90 feet of the lot are, parking lot. So it prevents that. And so this is really fundamental. This is the topic you guys brought up on your own. I've been harping on this each time I've presented this, that this is really foundational and it's the biggest change that we're making. The most fundamental change that's being proposed. There are some other big changes, but this one's really critical to urban design principles that are reflective in downtown. And the other example I'll say real quick is when you walk down and you get to Allen Street and the environment changes drastically. This is why. These elements are what changes. And you feel that change in your in terms of the walkability and the sense of comfort that you experience as a pedestrian. One of the other, right, the flip side, buildings is one thing, the other side is the parking, right? These are the kind of the two things. The final language will aim to greatly limit any standalone parking that would be like a business. Like, hey, I come park on my lot and I'll charge you money. That as a use, as a standalone use, would be greatly discouraged. And I don't think outright take it away. We've got to figure some of that out with legal, but we would try to make it where it's not necessarily a viable option because we want to discourage surface parking standalone. We want to consolidate parking so that the land within this valued area of town is utilized for economic purposes for to enhance this built environment that we all appreciate. And so the surface parking lots deter from that, whereas buildings that are built well and vibrant public spaces encourage that, right? But asphalt parking lots, that's not why tourists come here to walk along our parking lots. So some other ways that's achieved is through parking maximum. So you can have parking associated with your business. You could have accessory parking next to your office, for instance. But it would be capped at how much parking you could have so that we don't have people over parking. We are encouraging shared parking. There's jumping back up, there's requirements that if it's a large scale development, once it reaches a certain point, they would be required to build structured parking so that the surface parking that would be necessary, the parking spaces that would be necessary to accommodate that use, if they were all surface parking, would take such a large area that it, has a really negative impact on the district. So we would be saying you've got to stack that and provide a smaller footprint to accommodate that parking. In that case, they could overbuild the parking so that then other uses could share that same, be efficient with a new parking structure. That may even look like a public-private partnership where the city's involved in something like that. And so then other uses are able to, other parcels would be able to be better utilized if they're able to accommodate that parking. And then a new one being introduced would be bicycle storage for multifamily residential uses. So we want developers to make sure that they're aware that that is a growing, and especially in this area of town where you can and will continue to be able to get around by foot and by bike, probably more conveniently than by driving, that is accommodated for with bicycle storage and bike racks for parking for businesses. Again, a max of 2 bike racks, no matter what size of a business you would have. So we're trying to keep it reasonable with the bike rack. This just goes to illustrate, the comparison between what you can do on an acre of land. You can get 120 parking spaces, or you can do this. And you can see the number of buildings and how much office space and retail and residents could be accommodated along with some parking. And imagine the tax revenue or the the profit or the improved, public health. There's a wide range of benefits that would come from building in a smart way, in an efficient way. And then I didn't forgot to mention this on structured parking. There's a requirement that if it's of a certain size, then it would have buildings along the edge of the parking structure. So that you continue that interactive and economic opportunity rather than have like a blank space where the whole section of street would just be parking garage. But in this picture, you can see the parking garage is tucked in the back of the block. You can see back there and accessed through the middle. The liner buildings is what we're referring to there. For continuing site design, there's some, minimization of access and driveways. Really, that's all about, continuing to maintain a walkable environment. Screening of service areas. Again, it's an aesthetic component. The open space requirements, so it's not very large, but some percentage of each site would have an open space requirement. And then in that open space, if it's commercial, 50% of it would have to be publicly accessible. So you're creating these interactive spaces along the street, kind of plazas and whatnot. This is a whole list of the different types of urban open spaces and which character districts they would be most appropriate in. And then an applicant could choose from that menu of open spaces when they're designing their site. Moving into building design, the big one is the height district. I think we pretty well went over that, but essentially the orange is 40 feet high, which in some cases is actually lower than what the current zoning allows. The pink is 64 feet, which is about the same as what we have now. The orange along Main Street, which is kind of hard to see, but buildings fronting Main Street would, this is something we workshopped through during the master plan, would stay at 40 feet, which is about 3 stories tall, so that as a pedestrian on Main Street, you're maintaining the same look and feel that we have now, even if there is some development. But as you move back towards the alley, new development could step up to 54 feet, so 1 story up. And so that it helps with making the numbers work, right? Additional hotel rooms or additional units or whatever it may be that helps make the project work without necessarily detracting from the experience you have today. And that's just in the historic district. There are requirements for facade articulation, depending on the length of the building, a max length of 300 feet of any building. Those requirements are not much different than they're actually more relaxed than some of the standards we have in our zoning ordinance now. The architectural requirements are very soft, in my opinion, and they cover, some of the other elements within a building. We did add barrel roofs for those who were in the Economic Vitality Committee meeting. It was just flat roofs in certain sections, but we added that based on some feedback. We've got, requirements for ground floor activation, make sure there's transparency. So you have that interaction at the street level. But then for residential uses, you want to actually raise those up a little bit with stoops and porches so that you don't have those kind of privacy concerns. If you've got first floor residential, you're bringing those up. And those uses are going to be talked about in just a minute. Building materials, this is, requiring 50% brick in Maine and downtown is, that's a higher standard than we have now, that we already in CMU require certain and prohibit certain materials. Drafters, as mentioned earlier, it turns out C3, which is the bottom right orange on your map, is the only area within the district that you can currently even have a drive-through legally.
C3.
Spartanburg Highway.
So that's down near CVS, Walgreens.
Yeah, that area. And all this says is that you would have to place the window to the side or the rear of the building, which is what they, for the most part, are already doing. So it's a pretty soft in terms of drive-through. We also, again, are kind of bumping up against that downzoning law. And and if all of a sudden we said you can't have a drive-through in an area where you had historically been allowed to, then we would be on the wrong side of that. Again, the downzoning law was adopted 4 months after we adopted. So it was a real game changer for us in trying to figure out how do we implement this now that we have this new law that's constraining us. Franchise architecture was also alluded to. So your copy and paste architecture of a national franchise, for instance, couldn't just plop down in the district. I'm showing a Target in Charleston. This is a adaptive reuse. But even if it was, that's not Arden, that looks different, right? So that fits in with Charleston. We would, not necessarily be requiring that, but you would not be allowed to do an Arden style big box. The sign standards are in our sign ordinance rather than in the ordinance that's going to be creating this district. But it is applicable within the boundaries, and it has the things that you would typically see in a downtown, your projecting signs, your wall signs that fit within the architecture of the building, how signs get illuminated, not allowing freestanding signs and electronic message boards and things like that. No real shockers there. There's also, you have maybe are starting to see some of these wooden poles with these antennas on top. This is called a small cell wireless facility. There are a few actually going in within this boundary. And that, because of that, we are creating in a separate ordinance language that would govern how those get deployed across the city. If they're proposed from now forward, or from the adoption of that ordinance forward, which is slated for September or October, that would be, they would have to abide by what the ordinance says. In this case, if it's in the downtown design overlay, what we're proposing is they use one of our decorative poles. They either co-locate on an existing pole and don't put in a new pole at all, but if they have to put in a new pole, it matches our decorative poles.
There was one installed on Washington, correct?
Washington, West Allen.
I think one today on Grove.
Grove Center.
They get the whole Grove.
So if you haven't seen them,
Yeah, I was wondering what that,
take a look.
yeah.
What are they again?
They're part of our cell data.
Selfie.
Yeah, instead of the big towers, these are the, they actually operate at a different wavelength that needs to be more direct to consumer. But they help with offset the loads of data that are now streaming across the air. The next other use, the other thing we've talked about a lot is the prohibiting first floor residential. And we actually got some feedback from this group, and then we got some feedback from city council. City council was not real keen on just not allowing it on Main Street, but allowing it on the side streets. And so what staff is now proposing is something modified, which would be no first floor residential, upper floors only on Main Street. And I guess portions of 7th Avenue. But beyond that, on the other streets, you could have within the downtown, within the Main Street character area, you could have residential on the first floor at the rear of buildings, so they maintain a storefront, maintain an opportunity for a retail space. But you could have access, if you think about how we came in up here, right? You could have a door that goes down a hallway next to, a retail shop with a door, that door goes down the hallway to the rear portion of that space. We have some really big spaces on Main Street. So that's a way for development or for buildings to be repurposed and may not otherwise be able to be utilized fully depending on the demand for commercial space. And so you can use some of it for residential without losing your frontage. And so that's what we're gonna put forth. Any thoughts on that from this group?
Thank you.
I just want to interject, we're at 5:23.
We're right at the end.
5:40, we can start conversation on it.
Yeah, well, we're, yeah, last slide.
Better.
The other big one, this is kind of outside of this group, is there are some residential districts, as you go down the Acoustic Trail, you see the green. So the light green is R15, which is a lower density, single family, and the dark green is R6, which is a smaller lot residential. The idea would be that along the trail, we would have potentially increase in uses that typically would not be allowed in a residential area, such as bike-oriented businesses, maybe some office, some trailhead parking, uptick in, some density, allow some multifamily. We have something called small scale multifamily, which is a maximum of 8 units. And so that would be a way for more people to live in close proximity to what is essentially a transportation corridor, just not for cars, right? But it is a way for people to move around. Very convenient if you can get more people closer to those, that infrastructure. So, and with that, open up for any questions. Any comments?
Comments you want to start?
To go back just a second, you were talking about the people living on Main Street, and there was some conversations about that at city council. Were there any changes? Did one thing, sorry, we might go to Storm.
Yeah, so we had, whenever this came to the downtown board last, the downtown board said, because there's already residential, like on Fifth Avenue, right next to City Hall, and the new build on, what's it, second or third? The downtown board said they were fine with residential on the avenues, just not on Main Street. City council didn't want to have residential for infill on Main Street. So what they're proposing is if it's multi, or what was it that you had
Second.
for the residential?
So might help visually to look at this. We went back and forth with a couple ideas. One was that we would base it on street type. We are focused on the Main Street provisions.
This is just
And
first floor.
Yeah, first floor residential. But then allowing it on the avenues, that was one idea I think that we kind of walked away with last time. But since then, there was some feedback at city council that really wanted to retain non-residential within that entire Main Street character district. So outside of that character district, you could have townhomes and, residential multifamily apartments, things like that. But within Main Street, they really wanted to retain that street level for non-residential uses. And so with that feedback, what I proposed was to limit residential uses along frontages, but still allow on the first floor in some areas. For instance, the standard could limit residential to upper floors only on properties with Main Street frontage. But on the side streets, residential could only be in the rear half of a first floor street level. It could be in basements and it could be in upper floors. So you expand where in the building residential could be, as opposed to what's on Main Street. And this would retain the front 50%. The way the standard would read would talk about how it can be accessed and like a percentage of the street level floor area that could be devoted to residential uses. And that would pertain just within the Main Street character district. And then I think we would have to also do something within the
7th.
National Register District of 7th, because I can see further down 7th, you're gonna have, residential uses potentially like you do now that actually front on 7th. I don't see that being solely non-residential all the way to Lowe's, all the way to Greenway. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Nancy, you have anything you'd like to say? I think you wanted to bring
I don't
something
have
up.
anything to say on that, but the related Gen H implementation projects, are they gonna be as important as the related ones?
This was kind of where my head was at, is if we want to do all of these goals, where's our priorities gonna be? Where do we
Yeah.
want to start?
So the related Gen H implementation projects, I think they're all so important, but you know, the timing and how we go after it all. I mean, we've been working on this for years now. And
Yeah, so this one was one of the priorities that we had out of the codify the downtown design guidelines. And
Yeah.
so really we couldn't do hardly anything else without making the progress on this. Kind of simultaneously, also it's about exploring the additional MSDs. Municipal service districts, and that's something that staff is kind of actively.
yeah, I think those are so important, especially that last one, you know, the upper floors.
Yeah,
I remember when we had the conversation about Glen floor residential, there wasn't really strong feelings either way, and there was a lot of don't Asheville, not Hendersonville at that time, and that's where you would see. That's the closest example I can think of like a ground floor, like apartment complex, like on the street. And I think that was when we were like, well, let's make a setback, but you want to encourage those people who's like, I have an extra room, I want to rent it out. Or I would like to maybe build something in the future and just have like an apartment. I think I prefer this, what city council personally, I think that's better.
Yeah, I would support that.
Direction.
Yeah, it fits right in with some of the other components about having transparency, having the liner buildings on a parking deck. Like all those things are really trying to work so that you have an experience as a pedestrian where there's some action, there's some interaction, there's some interest, there's some life as you're on this street. And when you have a residential first floor use, what you get is privacy. I'm trying to shield myself because I'm over here trying to do my, living. And it really doesn't work well, especially when they're at the same level. I've seen it in places you end up with a wall of blinds or, a blank wall or something. Even if you did create transparency and have windows that met our ordinance, they would keep them covered up the whole time. And it really gives a dead zone kind of feel. And so that's what it's trying to work against.
Yeah, that bugs me when I'm walking around downtown and all the blinds are closed.
Yeah.
and if it's somebody's living room, you never know what you're gonna see.
And if you go to some other cities where it is, that aren't as vibrant as we are, you can see like, man, if that window just opened up and a business went in there or it would, really liven up the town and, you start some momentum, but you get a couple of those and it really starts to bring things down. So
In the details of this, does it have any description of what that business can be? Or it can be anything? It could be.
any of the uses that are allowed within our zoning ordinance today.
Yeah, this doesn't touch in uses.
Yeah.
The one thing it would do is maybe increase those uses along the trail that I talked about at the end. And then it modifies, put some standards in place for parking lots. Parking lots and garages are currently a use that's allowed in downtown. And we'd be saying, parking lots, we're gonna limit that. So that's a use that would be.
The only reason why I bring that up is because, and I'm not for or against either one, but like the residential that we bring up, there's closed space there, but also where Triskelion moved out, another business moved in. It's technically a business, but there's still some dead space there. So there is still opportunity for that to happen, but hopefully by having businesses, it reduces that dramatically.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not much we can.
Yeah, you can't.
Require on the property to do as much as I would love to.
Well, yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or
So here's what I
inquiries?
think I've heard. We spent a lot of time on this. The planning board has done best practices in looking at it. City council has looked at it. You've done the economic vitality has looked at it. What you're looking for from us is a recommendation to move this forward. It still has to be voted on by city council.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is a cover sheet that he's got in the agenda that has suggested motions. If you don't feel comfortable with a motion, that's fine too, but it does have suggestions for.
So the other thing that Matt suggested before we move into this is that this still has time. We don't have to give an answer on that right now. And this decision that we make again is a recommendation to city council to move one way or the other. And if any of you are unfamiliar with all the details or don't feel comfortable voting one way, we could also suggest to have a vote on it next time or at a later time when we are more informed or others who have not had time. Now, we won't probably have Matt here to go through everything all over again.
Not gonna do that again.
No. Matt has done his part. He may be available for questions.
This and semifinal soccer match.
As you guys can tell, this is not something that's just thrown together and like given to us. Like this has been worked on for months, if not years. You know, years. And, you know, we have had meetings and they have had meetings and city input, and there's been a lot that's gone into. Not that that should pressure your vote one way or another or a delay, but just so that we're all informed about that.
Can you remind us that what's still outstanding or may change? It's not much, but.
Yeah, so one would be like clarifying the exterior renovations. How would that apply? Would it apply?
And that'd be illegal.
Yeah, they're really about legal. And then the parking, like I have a strong perception that legal is gonna say we can't outright prohibit these standalone service parking lots. Though I have an argument for why I'm gonna make my case, right? But they're gonna overrule me.
Yeah, ultimately, it's what the city attorney.
And so then what does that end up looking like? How do we finalize that language? There could be other reductions. So there's been pushback that was mentioned about impacts to development costs, construction costs. Are there elements to this that go too far that to impact that maybe don't get the bang for the buck that we want to scale back and really focus on the essential components? So that, and then the other thing would be trying to work towards, so we've really been working on the language and getting it right, and then going out and telling folks about it and updating folks. But there are some exhibits that we'd like to work on if time permits. Like let's take a scenario and pick a lot and figure out what a new development would have to do to be compliant with this, and kind of spell out those details and walk you through that. I mentioned this earlier, but like how many vacant lots are underutilized being the land value exceeds the building value. So it has a building on it. It's just from a tax standpoint is worth less than the land it sits on. How many of those lots are there? How many completely vacant lots are there? What kind of, so what are we looking at? What kind of impact do we see in terms of potential new development? So that can be informative as well. So I can come back next month, show you that map. You guys will be like, oh, wow, this could have a really big impact because look at all those parcels that are out there, or vice versa. Update the language after getting some more direction from legal. And then, maybe walk through a scenario and then not go through all the details.
I saw that you pointed out the second floor incentives on the second floor renovations. Is there any language about incentivizing doing something with some of the open spaces
to use?
For instance, we were talking about the space south of the valley. Although there's so many lots right there.
Yeah, there aren't. Someone else asked me that too.
And the incentives won't really be in this conversation because that wouldn't be a part of the design overlay.
No, but
what is recommendation in the comp plan. So that's that wouldn't be something that they would be discussing for today.
For activating the upper floors, you're talking about?
Any of the incentives.
Well, one note I took down right before I started, because this is part of I mentioned this kind of series of other projects that would kind of stem from this. And I mentioned the upping the cap on development review and streamlining that. That is one thing that's not part of this that I just thought about, that for those underutilized lots, for instance, instead of the threshold for having to go to city council for approval for a project, instead of that being 50 units, what if we move that up to, 200 units or some other, 150 units, some number, so that anything under that could be approved or reviewed by staff under these new, more rigorous standards. Because now city council, planning board, they're going to feel more assurance that they're going to not have to look at every detail before it gets approved. That staff is empowered to do that because we have more and better standards now. So that would be an incentive, because now I know that if I own this property, I can build this because I've read through these rules and I know I can build that way. Versus I have no idea if city council is going to approve it or not. That's a huge risk.
Right.
So I'm not going to take that risk and I'm going to go somewhere else. So that's how it would.
Same thing could be said between Fourth and Fifth, over by Maple, by the feed store.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, and the way that the site layout changes, it allows more density for building, which would be, it's not incentive as in us giving them money, but it's giving them the ability to do more with their property in a different way than what they currently could do.
Yep. Yeah, on certain zoning districts.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Something would help me is if somebody owns property here today, just snapshot of your feeling of what this feels like to you. And if somebody operates a business in the district, how does this feel to you? Because those are two perspectives. We're looking at people that own property, people that operate properties, and it doesn't have to be in depth, but just a snapshot of just what's your gut reaction to it. Nobody has to do that if they don't want to.
Man, you can actually use mine, because, I've talked to you for years about mine and my development. We can use it as an example.
Yeah, we can look at doing that, doing a case study there.
Want to briefly talk about that project?
But I'm working on a project. I've been with Matt for the last few years, but I'm working on a project now where I can do anywhere between 37 to 42 doors or something like that. And we can just probably use that. It's not a huge space or room, obviously up and out, but we can just.
Where is it located?
It's on Jonas off 7th Avenue. You can go up Beach or Cherry, and it's off Jonas space in 64.
And what's your feeling of the plan?
Everything he said, I've already heard. Most of it, because he'll tell you, I hit him up real quick and go forward. I go to the office real quick.
Feel good about it?
I do, but I'm real familiar with what I need to do.
And I'd say it's because how our representation on these boards are, the Main Street and 7th Avenue districts are already kind of built, at least the ones with property in it, are already kind of built to what we're trying to get the other areas to do. So they're already, like Erica's building, for example, she's already, it's in the Main Street Historic District and 7th Avenue Historic District. So she's already, and I'm not gonna speak that for you, but it's kind of already, so you have to follow.
Yeah, I feel like, everything is fine. I don't feel like I'm really impacted a whole lot and I have 7th and Main.
Okay.
And I'm fine with it.
And I would say, and I don't want to speak for other people still, but I am. I mentioned Lyle Sharif's property on 7th Avenue. That infill development is a good example of what this would require versus what someone wanted to do on their own. And then not here today, but Scott Gash, who's also just joined the board. He has a vacant property on 7th, and he had to come by and talk to Matt, and I was showing him the downtown master plan and basically what all of this would be. And so he was already making plans to build his parcels that are facing 7th to these type of standards. Those are just a couple examples. The ones who would be uneasy about it would probably be some of the larger property owners that are outside of our area, would be my thoughts.
Any business owners that would like
I
to?
can say that I think this is very much needed because people come to Hendersonville, especially Main Street, for its charm. And you gotta have guidelines because if you don't, Main Street's gonna lose the charm, we're gonna lose the tourists. So I'm very much for this.
And the historic guidelines too,
Yes.
you have to go before the historic board on Main Street. I mean,
But the historic guidelines are not encompassed by this entire outline. There are sections that are not
Yeah, the historic
If you
is
look
just
under
a
map,
small area.
be held
Everybody's got a map.
standards.
There's like, in the orange in the very dead center, there's a little white hash area that you can see that's even smaller in that area. It's kind of hard to see it. MSH, Main Street Historic. Those properties are in the historic district. Everything else in the rest of the black outline has no design standards of any. So a big part of this is really expanding that assurance of
Main Street.
Yeah, the
character.
historic district has already had pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, both of y'all have experienced that, and this does not really, like, the historic district standards are way more difficult to follow than anywhere outside of it, so, and those all stay the same because that's to maintain that here.
And you have to go to a board for approval. We don't have that. Other places do. You have to go before a design review board. But that's not a component right now of this. Maybe one day we find that it's too subjective. And so it needs a board review of some sort, but that's not part of this right now.
So what I'm hearing is a lot of this is gonna put some restrictions on how the growth that is inevitable, and we are seeing obviously happening in our downtown area. It broadens that field of keeping an aesthetic. But we have to be realistic about this. There's another side to it too. It's gonna help grow. It's gonna bring new opportunities in that, are gonna be part of the growth. But the whole thing here is how do we influence that to represent what our downtown district wants to look like? Sounds pretty good? With that being said, it's 5:45. Do we need to have a motion for either approval or denial, or can we possibly start with a push on the vote? Is that something it's either approval or denial, or?
I think you just call for a vote, and if someone would like to make a motion to approve, deny, or vote, or whatever.
On vote or
the motion.
delay?
Defer.
Yeah.
So as a new person, based on what I've heard, what you've done, city council's gonna have to vote on it anyway, so if something comes up, it can get reviewed.
Correct. This is a recommendation. We just so we all know, we don't make the votes on what happens. We solely recommend a council one way or another.
So you have my vote to move it forward if somebody wants to make that motion, if you want that to be a motion.
So are you motioning for approval, for denial, or for a push to vote if people need more knowledge?
Voting tonight.
So if you could read what's on your packet or on the approval, we need you to state, you are making a motion for the downtown continue. It's on 9 or right on the board. I believe Matt zoomed in on it for you.
Not page 9, right?
That's correct, on your left.
I'm just repeating what's for approval.
Yes, sir.
I move the Downtown Advisory Board recommend approval of the Downtown Design Improvement District zoning text amendment. This proposal advances the goals of the city's comprehensive plan, downtown master plan, EAB work plan, and city council strategic.
Is there a second? Jenny seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Joe and Mark oppose. The rest are for. Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it. Thanks for everybody's time.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks, everybody. That was, like Mark said, it's not a normal, we don't normally go through this much. I do have two things.
We have time. We have 12 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you, Matt. See you guys.
So, the first thing I want to introduce another one of the city's interns, Jules. She is with the administrative department, admin intern. And Jules is doing research on, 7th Avenue and the city's public investment that has been made over the course of the last, 20 years? Since 2010. Since 2010, the city's public investments and how that has impacted, development, growth, and displacement in 7th Avenue district and the residential areas around it. And so she's reached out to a couple people who's been on the board, and I gave her your email, Terry. So that's Terry. So you check in with him. And so Jules might, particularly for 7th Avenue, might be in touch with some folks. So she's been working on a lot of research related to that, and then compiling a lot of information for 7th. Is there anything else? Okay. And then the second thing, and we do not have to have any kind of vote, and it's not even in the agenda because it just came up today. Or it didn't come up today, but we finally had a meeting about it today. Treat Street. Okay, Treat Street.
Halloween evening.
Yeah, so Halloween on Main Street, and for the new folks, Halloween in particular is a difficult time for a street closure because the event starts at 5, the street closes, that's typically closed at noon, because then there's all of these organizations that come in and have to get it set up before all the kids come in. And so there's lots of chaos involved with Treat Street, and a lot of our Main Street businesses, because of the time of the street closure at 12, have had a lot of issue with it. Once the streets close and Halloween's happening, all great, I would say, but the act of the closure itself is the challenging part.
And it's a Saturday.
Yeah, yes, that's so this year, the Treat Street is on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so we just met earlier today, and I was just with Parks and Rec, who produces the event with us, and trying to figure out, and this is really only for this year with it being a Saturday, because we can't really do Halloween any other time but after 5 on a weekday. That's just how Halloween is. But since it's on a Saturday, typically for Main Street, where I see the problem is the act of closing the street down and getting the cars out, because then once the cars are out, people will come back. Like usually once we've started to set things up, people have come back, they go to the restaurants, they do whatever, but they might be in the middle of something. And then they're like, oh, I gotta get my car and go because the police are shouting at us. So with Halloween being on a Saturday, what the thought is, and y'all just take this, chew on it, and we can talk about it next month. So, talk with your neighbors, think about it, is would it be better to shut the street down in the morning? So that way there's not people being cleared out middle of day, because it would be 12 o'clock on a Saturday where we'd have to close the street down. So if we wanted to do it at close it down 9 o'clock or so in the morning, to have people parking already in the garage, already on the side streets where they already park when we have events, and then have Treat Street go from either 2 to 5 or 3 to 6 on the day of Halloween.
For me, that sounds great because it is chaos. It's chaos after dark.
It is.
We are a staple mass community, hordes of families and kids and older kids that are too old.
Yeah.
Bombard our storefront to get candy, and every time after dark, the older kids is just get rowdy and yeah.
Yeah, you can't change the day because it
Yes.
leaves so much on Fourth and Fifth Ave as well.
Yeah.
All the traffic down there for the people moving.
And all the little kids are gone before dark anyway.
Yeah, who it's really for, the families, the
Yeah,
little
that's right.
kids. Yeah, they're in and out
Yeah.
by 6:30 anyways.
I know on our end, we generally stay open a little late, but not that late.
You don't have,
There's a lot of people,
we run out.
they don't come in. They just don't. We've tried and we do stay open later. But I think if personally, if it was earlier in the day, it'd be more in line with our.
We probably, we do this year, probably next year, probably because it's a Sunday we'd probably have slightly different times. And then I don't foresee us being able to do it earlier on weekday though, because school and whatnot.
Would you have something that you could compare it to where you shut down the Main Street on a Saturday at the same time frame? Did we do that for Fourth of July? That was.
4th of July, we shut.
July shut down in the morning and so because the parade is earlier, and
It
then.
doesn't open. I mean,
Yeah, and then from Third Avenue South, it stays open, so Parks and Rec can get everything in. Also, it's so much easier to close the street down in the morning. And then, and this is where, like, y'all will probably be the ones, and not me, will get people who are like, why is the street shut down so early?
I have to
But
advocate that, like, my business is on 7th Avenue, so if I'm less impacted by this. Saturday, 4th of July killed my business for that day. I can only imagine if I owned Mike's on Main, where a breakfast place, shutting down the street earlier and then.
It was
on
probably-
Saturday really hurt.
and your business though also didn't have the farmer's market on that Saturday, which probably wasn't.
So
It definitely hurts. It definitely hurts. Any street closing,
No,
That's the
but
question.
he's right about restaurant.
we close the street, it's a problem for us,
But it would be,
but we have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's,
Advocate
you
for the
know,
latest possible street.
so the latest possible would be 12. So lunch, right in the middle of lunch. When people are sitting down eating and then they have to get in their cars and
as
move.
opposed to not opening and having the party during lunch where all those families need to come eat or go inside, get something. I'm not picking one way or the other. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I'd say maybe, chat about it because Mike's on Main would probably, like, when the street's closed for an event, all of the restaurants are slammed.
Yeah.
There are a lot of stores that are.
Yeah, but
Is that on the agenda for the next meeting?
yeah, I'll put it on there.
Great, if we can put that on there. I just wanted to, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we should just do our best to talk to other
Yeah,
businesses
that-
around something.
yeah.
It generally is a thing. I mean, I
This
love
is
it,
a big
restaurant
change.
people, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's great for us, but.
Yeah, anytime Main
the
Street, something happens. on Main
Retail,
Street, it's a
the
win.
retail spots don't like it.
Right.
yeah, but
All
it's the
retail
difference
doesn't sound
between,
good.
Yeah.
if we do it at 5 to 8, that we, in the typical time, the street has to shut down at 12.
Right.
Which is,
That's
in
all,
my mind,
it's a heavy can, it's a big can of worms.
yeah, 12 is the worst time.
We should
Right,
put a
when it's
spot
packed.
where we can discuss this
Yeah,
in depth.
yeah, so just have that context as you talk with others to bring that back for the next
So
meeting.
if you're gonna do it, you might as well.
Rip it off.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay, so there's everything else that just happened in the agenda, I have nothing else on that. That
I
was
just want to make sure we end on time. Would you like to address everybody with anything that you'd like to talk about or?
I move that we adjourn.
On time. Finally voted there. I'd like to just say thank you to everybody for being here in this new term. Thanks to Nancy and for all of your votes. One thing that will be sure to try and do is keep these meetings timely and moving. Sometimes they get a little long in discussion, and although that's very important, we also have things that we have to tackle on the agendas every month. Make sure you try and review your packets prior to the meeting. There's a lot that goes into this. Jamie puts a lot into preparation, and it's our responsibilities to respect that and come prepared. So if you guys could just make sure that you find time in the day. And also, lastly, feel free to talk to a lot of the members that have been here, Aaron, Nancy, Joe, and Jamie and Oliver and
I don't know if I'm in that
everyone
group.
else. What's that?
I don't know if I'm in that group.
I think you're in that group.
Am I in that group now?
And that, you've been here. Sure. You know, just even if it's after a meeting, if something's brought up about parking or something's brought up about green space and it seems like we've discussed it, feel free to ask anybody some history on it. And I know that you will not be disappointed. You'll probably get more information than you expect. So with that being said,
We're adjourned.
All
can I get a second? Do I need a second or is it just a motion and we're? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add to that, sometimes it is easier to bring things up